Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome back to my channel. This is Carrie Konyha bringing you another video to support your journey in spiritual awakening, healing, and empowerment. This video is a part of my Empowered Empath series, and today I'm sharing tips, tools, practices taken directly from my Empowered Empath coaching program that you can begin using on your own for yourself right away to support your own journey through woundedness or disempowerment into empowerment as an empath. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for being here. I'm super excited to be sharing this information with all of you today. As a lifelong empath myself, who is a survivor of domestic violence and narcissistic abuse, and who has found my own way into empowerment regarding my own gifts as an empath, it's a huge part of my sense of what brings meaning and purpose and passion in my life's work to support others who are on this journey. An empath is a highly sensitive and intuitive person whose literal nervous system is wired a little bit differently than a lot of the population. That enables us to be highly tuned into the energy dynamics that happen through life on a subtle energy level. It enables us to sense things, feel things, and know things that other people are not consciously aware of. This is definitely a huge gift. In fact, empaths are people who are born to utilize those gifts to contribute to humanity and whatever your personal unique gifts happen to be. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but for now I want to talk about how it is that these amazing gifts of energy sensitivity that we're born with can lead to trauma and woundedness. The primary way that we are inflicted, so to speak, with what becomes core wounds as children is through this dynamic of invalidation that happens. The reason this happens is because we can sense things and feel things that other people are not consciously aware of. Typically, empaths are blamed for making too much out of little things, being too sensitive, being silly, seeing things that aren't clear or accurate. And of course, none of that is true. The fact is that, yeah, empaths are highly sensitive beings. We're deeply impacted and affected by what we perceive going on around us on subtle energy levels. And a part of being empathic and being so deeply sensitive energetically means that we feel very deeply. We are very empathetic. For example, empaths are more likely than a non-empathic person to feel emotional and maybe even cry if you see a person crying, as an example. So this constant bereavement of invalidation that we experience as empathic children goes way beyond the invalidation that perhaps a non-empathic child would experience in life because they're not perceiving things that empaths experience. This dynamic leads to deep conflict within ourselves because we're constantly being told that what we are sensing, perceiving, experiencing isn't real, isn't true, isn't valid. And so what happens? We begin to self-reject. I've talked about this in some of my other videos. When we're in situations where we are being invalidated, we're being scolded for just being in our true nature, we begin forming deep unconscious beliefs that there must be something inherently wrong with us, that there's something off with us, that everything we do is wrong or bad or not right, and that perhaps we're unlovable. This type of energy that we experience as empathic children is what seeds deep woundedness that becomes a part of our shadow side. Now, I have other videos on this channel that talk about the shadow and doing shadow work, so I'm not going to talk about that part in this video. But I am going to mention here some of the more common components to the woundedness that empaths typically experience and how we can use those to catapult ourselves into empowerment. This whole thing about being invalidated typically leads to codependent, people-pleasing behaviors. Why does that happen? Because when we're constantly being invalidated as a child for things that are connected to our empathic abilities, it becomes deeply important for us to find some form of validation. And when we're children, we don't yet have the awareness to self-honor and self-validate. And so we begin seeking validation through outside sources. And that's where we unintentionally develop codependent patterns, meaning that we're seeking validation of our own self-value, self-worth through other people. The people-pleasing thing comes in this way. Empaths are very deeply compassionate. We don't like to see people be upset because we ourselves are committed to goodness and light and joy in life. We want to do what we can do to help other people to be in that space. But here's another component of the people-pleasing behavior. It's not only that we succumb to people-pleasing behavior because we want other people to feel good and we don't want to hurt their feelings, but on an even deeper unconscious level, empaths resort to people-pleasing behavior because the empath doesn't want to feel bad. Empaths feel what other people feel as if it's happening within themselves, but even more intensely a lot of times than the person themselves is feeling. So a part of why empaths revert to people-pleasing behavior is because if they're around somebody who feels bad, then that means they're going to feel it too. And a way that empaths unconsciously manage their environment so that they will feel comfortable and okay is making sure that everyone around them feels comfortable, good, has what they need. But that can become an unhealthy, toxic pattern if it's done excessively. Sure, of course, we all want to be aware and mindful of co-creating pleasant environments for the sake of harmony. But if we're people-pleasing, oftentimes that comes with going against ourselves. One of the biggest shamanic teachings about spiritual empowerment is connected to this. The teaching is, don't go against yourself. Don't create circumstances that go against you, and don't align with people that go against you. Unfortunately, oftentimes empaths get stuck in these toxic cycles of going against themselves, creating circumstances that go against themselves, and aligning with people that go against themselves because they're so desperately seeking validation. Hopefully you all can see how this is a very disempowering, toxic dynamic to get stuck in. But the good news is that we can shift that. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But first, let me just share a few other things that are connected to this codependent people-pleasing thing. This typically often means that we don't set or uphold our own sense of boundary or parameter. Boundary meaning that we have a clear awareness of what our intentions, goals, and needs are, and that we are advocating for ourselves. We're holding the space needed for those things to be experienced or manifested. Empaths often second guess themselves, and this includes second guessing your own talents, skills, and abilities. This stems back to the invalidation that we're bombarded with as children. It sticks with us in our shadow side as adults. Another common dynamic that leads to disempowerment as empaths is that we often mistake other people's energy as our own energy. Again, this is because we are so deeply feeling that it's very easy to get muddled and confused around what's my energy and what am I picking up from other people. And it can lead to a cloudedness, a convolutedness where we feel almost buried, like our own inner light is shrouded by these other energies that we're picking up. But until we can cultivate the awareness of this, we don't even know that it's going on. And we're just living our life in this shrouded, cloudy energy. However, on one level, we are aware of the fact that we're sensitive to the energies that are happening in our environment. And oftentimes we try to minimize our sensitivity by shrinking and contracting and constricting our own energy in effort to keep ourselves guarded from the uncomfortable effects that can come with being so highly sensitive. But shrinking, constricting, contracting, what does that do? It dims our light, it shrinks our energy. It literally can have the effect of bringing like a stagnation in our internal flow of life force energy. And because these are the top challenge issues that nearly every empath I've ever known faces, working with them will give you a concise structure to support your journey into empowerment as an empath. Empowerment begins with awareness, breaking free from the unconscious habits and patterns that we've fallen into through our life is a good place to start. I'm going to share with you now some specific things that you can do to bring yourself from unconsciousness into awareness. So awareness number one, we have to realize that our empathic abilities are not a disability. They're not a curse. It's actually a gift from spirit that not everyone has. Everyone does have the capacity to be intuitive, but not everybody is born highly energetically empathic and sensitive the way that empaths are. So realizing this is a gift for me to hone, and it's actually a part of my life work. It's a part of my soul's journey. It's a part of my life path. This is one of the core transformative components that I guide people through in my Empowered Empath coaching program. But again, you can get started on your own by just asking yourself, if I was looking at my empathic abilities as gifts from spirit, how would I define them? What would I recognize them as being? Another awareness gaining practice that you can do is to ask yourself empowerment questions. For example, if you are one moment feeling fine and then the next moment you suddenly feel anxiety or worried or fear or I don't feel well physically or headache or something like that, pause and ask yourself, ask your intuition, is this mine? Is this energy that I'm feeling right now? Is it mine? Or am I picking it up from a person around me or through the collective? Oftentimes when there's intense energies happening with world events, world changes, we will pick up the collective consciousness that's happening in regard to whatever those world events are, and we can be affected by those as well. Oftentimes we are unconscious of the energy that's impacting us, and we presume that, okay, I just feel anxiety right now for some unknown reason. I don't know why, but I feel it. Typically, if you don't have a personal reason for why you would feel a certain way, it's because you're picking it up from some type of outside source. And just asking yourself this empowerment question when that happens, is this mine? And then trusting what your own intuition tells you. In fact, and I have talked about this in other videos, one of the biggest empowerment practices that we can do as empaths is to strengthen, cultivate, hone, and gain confidence in our intuition. Our intuition is one of our superpowers as empaths, and it's a gift that we're meant to utilize, at least for the sake of our own navigation through life. Dedicating yourself to discovering, learning more about, honing, strengthening your own intuition is one of the best ways to empower yourself as an empath. Okay, this one is one of my favorites. As we're teetering and what might feel like somewhat stumbling a little bit at first while we're on that journey of transition through woundedness into empowerment, we're gonna start being more cognizant or conscious of triggers. Our triggers, meaning anything we experience in life in any given moment that triggers us into a state that is anything other than peace and ease. If you experience something that triggers you into worry, fear, uncertainty, panic, sadness, depression, whatever, those triggers are showing us where we still have unhealed wounds and where our soul growth work is. When we get triggered, we typically have a tendency to have like a knee-jerk reaction. When you're noticing that you're being triggered, it's really, really important to have the awareness of your trigger. You can put your hand on your heart or something and say, oh, the wounded part of me is being triggered right now. Or the codependent pattern in me is being triggered right now. The people-pleasing pattern in me is being triggered right now. So that you can stop the tendency to have that knee-jerk reaction and guide your way through into more of a conscious response instead. Now, I have some other videos on my YouTube channel here, which I'll link below or above here, that talk specifically about how to work through triggers and bring yourself into emotional healing. So you can refer to those for deeper insight on that. But here I'll say that asking yourself empowerment questions is a good way to guide yourself through those triggers. For example, let's say you feel triggered and you're about to have some type of reactionary response. Reactionary responses typically come from the wounded part of you, the unintegrated aspect of you, the fear part of you, the worried part of you, which is not the empowered you. If you can catch yourself in the moments just before being tempted into a wounded-based reaction, ask yourself, what part of me is influencing this action that I'm about to do, this choice that I'm about to make, or this perception that I have? Is this perception or this choice or this action that I'm about to do, is it coming from my wounded self or is it coming from my empowered self? Guide yourself to consciously choose the highest vibrational choice response, simply asking yourself, what would the most empowered aspect of me do right now? What would the highest and best higher self of me choose in this moment? What can I choose that would be the most self-loving response to this situation? The point is that empowerment comes with awareness. It's only through awareness that we're able to break free from the hold that those unconscious, wounded, shadow aspects have on us. And the reason we're talking about this is because it's the wounded, unhealed, shadow aspects that keep us in cycles of disempowerment. So the only way to break free from disempowerment into empowerment is having a conscious awareness of what those patterns and habits and cycles are. Anytime you feel triggered, also asking yourself, what are my truest needs in this moment? How is this trigger showing me what my truest needs are? And how can I advocate for myself? How can I show up for myself? How can I give myself whatever it is that I need in this moment? How can I enhance my own sense of self-love, self-worth, self-value? The practice that I have worked with the most that has led to a return to self-love, self-value, self-worth is the concept of spiritual self-reliance. I talked about this in one of my other videos. Spiritual self-reliance meaning that I'm cultivating a deeply self-aware relationship with myself. I'm showing up for myself as me being the love of my life, treating myself in the way that I imagine I would want the love of my life to treat me. Treat yourself that way. However it would be that you want to treat the love of your life, treat yourself that way. That for sure leads to enhanced self-love, self-appreciation, self-value, and self-worth. But going back to the spiritual self-reliance, I'm relying on trusting what my own inner guidance is compelling me towards, which is another reason that it's important to hone your intuition, because our spiritual guidance speaks to us through our intuition. Our spiritual guidance does not come from our wounded self or our fear self or our ego mind. It comes from the truth of our heart, our silent knowing, our inner wisdom. Our silent knowing, our inner wisdom speaks to us through our soul's language, which is intuition. Being willing to genuinely trust what your inner guidance is telling you, and then over time seeing how your intuition is guiding you on a path of higher joy, you will over time gain trust in it. I have a whole playlist on my channel here that gives tips on accessing and cultivating intuition, so I'll link that either here or below as well. But spiritual self-reliance also means that you're tapping into your inner guidance, you're using that as your main source for guidance in life, and you are claiming and owning accountability and responsibility for guiding yourself forward in those ways, rather than relying on external validation. We have to be willing to choose in alignment with what feels aligned and right and true for us. And inevitably, it's going to lead to that path of empowerment. The last thing I'm going to share in this video is that the path to empowerment for empaths is a journey. It's not something that's going to happen right away overnight, but it's also not something that has to take years and years and years to cultivate. You can begin seeing positive results simply through doing these steps that I'm sharing with you. Knowing about the steps isn't enough. You have to be willing to actually do the steps. So let me know in the comments below how your progress is going after applying some of these steps that I've shared with you. And stay tuned, there's more videos in this series coming up right around the corner, and I will see you in the next one. All my love, guys, blessings, and namaste.